Okay, well I think we're at the place I wanted to paint. I'm going to take this scene here, a lovely chateau in the hollow, and what I might do is actually use a little bit of artistic license and put a path around here and dropping down into the distance. So let's get it set up. Okay, once I've got the scene sketched lightly with a 2B pencil, I'm starting to add some colours to the sky, which is a cerulean blue mixed with a little bit of phthalo blue, I think, just to give that richness of early spring skies. I'll keep this wet and with a damp brush just sort of blend it down towards the hillside. As you can see, I'm working with just a large plastic palette. I've put the paints into the small wells in advance, and which just speeds up the mixing process. Now on those distant hills, starting with a bit of pale yellow ochre, and as I come forward I'm adding some burnt sienna and some stronger greens. As I mentioned earlier, that I've actually put a little road in, just kind of sweeping down to the right there, which I think will help take your eye into the picture. So at the moment I'm just putting in some stronger greens in the foreground. I'm just wiping away the path there as well. I'm going to come back to that later on. At this stage everything's pretty much wet in wet, so there's a nice kind of soft blending going on. And as this dries I can go in with a little sharper colours. But first I've decided to strengthen the sky with a little bit of phthalo blue, giving it a slightly richer feeling. It just felt a little bit too pale first time round. As I come down I just use a clean damp brush which just sort of fades that sky down to the horizon. Now some slightly stronger sap green in that foreground. You see the colours are paler in the distance, getting brighter in the foreground. It just helps to give that perspective feel. A couple of quick photographs. It's always good to take a few photographs as your work in progress. I'll probably use that in a printable tutorial later on. Okay, right, just adding some distant hills. Looks like I've got a little bit of burnt umber and probably some cobalt blue just to give that kind of slightly green feel. Once again, very pale. I'm kind of making sure I kind of look at the scene regularly just to kind of get that feel of where those light and dark areas are. I came up here a few days ago and it was a little bit more dramatic. There was a cloudier sky and the actual chateau was almost in a pool of light, which as you can see I'm just hinting at that here now as well, just to kind of make that kind of central spotlighted scene. Mixes of burnt sienna and there's a little bit of hooker's green I think coming in as well now. Slowly building up those spring vineyards in the foreground of the chateau. It was quite exciting to work on plein air. It's very much live and you're just taking a deep breath and diving in. But the colours are all happening in front of you. I mean, the good thing about it not being a cloudy day is that the light is pretty steady. You're not getting kind of big changes of shadows moving across the landscape. Just adding a little bit of intensity to the distant hills. Might even add a little magenta to that. As you can see, I'm working about, this is showing about twice speed. Otherwise we would have been here much longer. You want to get a little bit of definition in the hills, not just a flat colour. At the same time, you don't want to make it too dark, otherwise you're going to be in trouble trying to intensify the colours as you come forward. Just added a hint of a sort of thin magenta on the right hand side just to help that light and shade. As you can see in the sky, I've actually wiped some of the blue away with a damp brush just to suggest high clouds. As you're working outside as well, you'll find that the layers will dry quite quickly, and then, as you can see now, I'm just adding some finer details. I'm getting some trees around the chateau, which is going to help it stand out more, and putting some distant little kind of clumps of trees on the ridge there as well. This is I'm using SA brushes, the silver series, and as you can see, it's still quite a large brush, but they come to a good point, and so I'm still working with the larger brush, even with the distant details. So continuing on with the details, still putting in those distant trees on the ridge there. A vital stage, it just helps to give the illusion of distance. It's just a small road here with lined with cypress trees. Just going to work adding these in. As you can see, I'm slowly coming forward, building in the landscape, as Monica taking a speedy photograph of the scene. I find they generally work this way, where you get the overall scene, the overall tones down first, and then as that dries, you're starting in the background, bringing those details forward, using stronger colours as you come into the foreground. Now I'm just suggesting some of the kind of rough undergrowth. Looks like a kind of watery mixture of sort of sap green and a little burnt umber. Still with that big brush. It's like sort of mid-tone. I'm going to work in there with a darker tone later on, but I'm just sort of getting the overall feel here. Just trying to build up some tone to emphasize the track going through into the middle distance. Now I'm getting a little bit stronger, a bit more Hooker's green mixed into the mix. Still very loose and spiky, flicked up grass. It's kind of helping that being out there in the sun, these layers are drying quite quickly, and so that next dark layer is still fresh and not blending too much with the layer below. Now I've mixed up a little magenta and Payne's grey, and I'm putting in some shadows. A mixture of spiky strokes and some flatter brush strokes as well. Yeah, even though I say it myself, I'm liking the way that looks. I love those. The distant hills are now seemingly fading away, and now I'm going to pencil in some of the tree trunks and branches just to remind myself where they are, and then I'm going to put quite a strong dark grey brown mix on with a rigger brush before putting the blossom on. Before I started painting the trees on in the foreground there, I realised I've just stood back and just assessed the whole scene, and I've decided to put a little bit extra greenery in the background just to sharpen those ridge lines there in the background. So now I've got to mix up a dark kind of Payne's grey and burnt umber. I'm just slowly putting these old trees in the foreground. It kind of helps if you paint them up from the ground upwards and flick out the branches, gives a more natural feel. It's always too easy to make those upper branches too heavy, and then it's difficult to repair.
So as you can see, I'm just taking those branches above the line of the distant hills, just to emphasize their position in the foreground. Just hinted one or two smaller trees down in the dip as the path goes down. I think I'm using a little artistic license here. Try and keep the water fresh though. That keeps your colours fresh as well. On occasion I'll wipe out the well on the actual palette, and as I've done here, just to keep the white pure, I've used like a white gouache, which just gives you a lovely thick opacity. I guess not strictly watercolour in the true sense. You could have done the blossom with a masking fluid, but I think I tend to prefer working with a gouache on top. I've got pure white here, but I think I'll add just a little hint of pink to suggest some shadow area as well. Keep the paint nice and thick when you're putting the white on, because it can, if you've got it too watery, it'll tend to kind of soak in the colours beneath. So you need to let the background dry, mix up the paint strongly, and then just dab that in. And it really gives a little sparkle to the whole scene. It's also important to have that background just dark enough so that white does stand out from it. As you can see, that's probably why I put the extra line of trees on the left hand side there, just as a backdrop for the white blossom to shine out from. Great, well that's today's painting finish. I've really enjoyed doing that. If you've enjoyed the tutorial, please hit the subscribe button below to receive information about upcoming videos, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.